Our childhood is something that we treasure personally. How we saw things and how they made us feel. But if I told you that analog horror these days could take it and turn it into something more impactful and bizarre than it actually was. Welcome to analog horrors that will ruin your childhood. I'm Sir Chris, I explore the internet and I make videos about it. South Park is a cartoon series that debuted in 1997 about a group of kids in the fictional city of South Park in the United States. Beyond Birth is a YouTube channel known for its analog horror series about South Park. It has a total of 4 videos about this program, but let's review 2 of my favorites. Stan's Grieving and Kenny's Torment. Stan's Grieving begins with a warning saying that the tape was corrupted, until the episode finally begins. It starts with Stan going to visit Kenny, who was in the hospital. When he reaches the room, Kyle appears and says that he stopped breathing and left with his last words. "Where is Stan?" During the funeral, among several people, there is a sadness that stands out the most, that of Stan, since he did not make it in time to see his friend. And with that, we have the following sentences. "I never said goodbye to him. I'm such a horrible person. I can't go on like this." And then, we can see several images of the empty city, until Stan appears lifeless, and hands up with a photo of the cemetery. Kenny's Torment is a continuation of the previous one, as we see the city completely empty, since without the 2 protagonists, the city would not be the same. South Park starts, and in the middle of it, it cuts to a dark room, with only Kenny asking us an interesting question. "How did you find peace? Did you look for it? Did it come to you? Did it come at all? You're broken. We can fix you." In which Kenny appears, completely destroyed, and the episode ends with him in bed struggling, saying that this is not real. The worst thing is that there are theories where they say that Kenny dies in every episode, but always ends up coming back in the next one, but not anymore. Spongebob is a cartoon that needs no introduction. There's a creepypasta about a pirated episode that ended up being recreated by Vibing Leaf here on YouTube. This episode would have been found by 5 teenagers at a psychiatric hospital. The tip was based on a regular Spongebob episode, Dumped, where Gary ends up spending time with Patrick, but the tape would have been modified. In the laundry part, we noticed that Spongebob was more affected than in the normal episode. So much so that even the narrator ends up talking to him, not once, but twice, in which he intends to point out how pathetic it was. Of the 5 teenagers who saw the tape, 2 committed suicide and 1 ended up missing. There are several remakes of this episode on YouTube, but one that caught my attention was this one. Amazing World of Gumball is another cartoon, one of the best in my opinion, that focuses on Gumball's family, but especially on the main 3, Gumball, Darwin, and Unaired. The Grieving is another creepypasta, in which starts with some parts of previous episodes, until we see Gumball alone in the middle of the classroom at night, drowning in his memories, with the following phrases. "I didn't save them. I just watched them run away from that monster. I didn't save them. It's all my fault." When the screen goes completely black, another dialogue appears. This time, it wasn't Gumball. "Anais, can you hear me?" "No." As Darwin appears without a leg and with several injuries, while looking at the box, until a trunk is projected by an unknown creature, which ends up ripping his head off, which soon we see who was inside of the box. The morning came, and we see that Gumball couldn't handle what happened that day, and ends up taking his own life in the middle of the room. At the end, we see both parents having a sad conversation in front of their children's graves. "Nicole, yes? Did we do great as a family?" "We did, Richard. We can't do anything about this, but no one is to blame. What is the most important is how did we do for them. And I am sure we did amazing. We did what we could, honey. Take your time. It's going to be okay." Jurassic Park is a movie about a dinosaur park, with a total of 7 movies and even has its own game. On their own channel, they have orientation tapes for new employees, which fed the community mind to the point where some of them made analog horrors about it. Rustico is the channel that stands out the most in this playlist, due to the quality of the tapes, the first being instructions on what to do when the dinosaur is attacking the vehicle, in which they give an horrible example. How are we supposed to reach the trunk without getting injured since he's attacking the back? As we continue, we see that there are not many security methods, at least mentioned, that when they mention a specific dinosaur, everything starts to fall apart, until the tape is prohibited. The second shows an initial audio of an employee being chased by a velociraptor, until he dies by it. Normal programming comes back, and they mention the fact that the dinosaur was faster than the previous employee. The last tape shows another employee who entered a building in an attempt to escape from a dinosaur, in which he calls the central for help, in which unfortunately they can't do anything, and mention that he will be story. This analog horror had a lot of potential if it wasn't so goofy. Sonic, one of the classics, but let's talk about the analog horror that appeared in 2022, long after the creepypasta Sonic.exe. Sonic Limited Edition The Lost Cartridge was an analog horror created by Jordan, where in the playlist of 6 videos I will analyze 2. The first tape, we see Knuckles running for a long time, until the scenario ends up crashing, in which takes him to a level called You Can't Run Away Act 2, where we can see several corrupted items. When we move to the third scene and almost drown, we end up finding Sonic, who asks us to play with him. When we catch him 3 times, he starts cheating, until we run out of time and Knuckles loses his life. The last tape shows us an interesting call between 2 individuals, Ned and James, where both were friends, but James was in a vegetative state. After a little disagreement, James proves it's him because of the sock? James ends up giving Ned a mission. He had to be hired as a play tester at Sega to pick up a prototype, and without time to tell him why, Sonic catches him. And we see that he had the objective of keeping the game a secret, which from that, he will have to stop Ned from getting the game, and everything ends. Now, if you see any of those I mentioned, you will remember this video. If you watch until the end, I love you, and I see you next time.